Welcome to Beyond the Clinic, the podcast for health professionals ready to transform their expertise into innovative income streams that extend beyond the traditional clinic model. I'm Sarah Armand-Bushell. I'm a registered dietitian and certified business coach and proud owner of 2 successful online businesses. I understand the leap from the security of a regular salary can feel intimidating because I've been there too. But it doesn't have to be scary, and you do not have to do this alone. Here you'll learn tangible strategies to accelerate your business growth. So if you're dreaming of using your expertise to create impact and a life of freedom, then you're in the right place. Have you ever had someone disagree with your professional clinical opinion online? If you haven't, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say you probably will at some point, because if you're running a private practice or online business and you're sharing your advice, your perspective and your experiences, it's almost inevitable that there are going to be people who disagree with you. And when it does happen and you get those negative comments coming through, you're going to want to know what to do. I feel like this really isn't talked about very much. We talk about how to grow online, how to create good content, how to attract clients, but we don't really talk about what to do when someone challenges you. And let's be honest, it's not very nice. It can knock your confidence. It can make you second guess yourself. It can make you question whether you should stick to playing it safe with your content. And I've definitely experienced this myself. Today, I'm going to open this up properly and talk about the time when I got a lot of negative comments on one of my posts in my nutrition business. It was from a parent who disagreed with something I shared in my children's nutritionist business, and a few of them definitely did not hold back in how they expressed it. But in the end, this post actually ended up performing really well for me. It ended up massively growing my audience and getting a lot more eyes on me, which I'll explain more in detail in this episode. I'm going to share the exact story of what I posted, what the negative comments said, and how it affected me in the moment, and actually how I ended up turning this into a positive outcome for my business. So, in this episode, I'm going to walk you through how to handle negative comments without spiraling. And we're going to talk about the benefits of having slightly more polarising, controversial content, why it's something you should be doing and not avoiding, and how it can actually strengthen your positioning and attract more of the right people. So let's get into it. This is not something the NHS or our clinical training trained us for, right? We were trained to assess, to diagnose, to support our patients, not to handle strangers on the internet challenging what we say, sometimes very bluntly. And because of that, when it does happen, it can feel really quite uncomfortable. Because naturally, the last thing most of us want is a negative comment or people disagreeing with us. We've been taught to be evidence-based, to be responsible, to do the right thing for our patients. So when someone questions that, especially in a public space, it can feel actually quite personal. You might think to yourself, what if other people see their comments and think, I don't know what I'm talking about? You might feel the urge to over-explain yourself. You might think about just deleting the post altogether. And you might decide that next time you play it safer so you avoid saying anything that could be challenged again. All of these feelings are normal, especially because a lot of the time we tend to have our NHS hats on in these kind of situations. But a negative comment or someone disagreeing with you doesn't automatically mean you've done something wrong. It doesn't mean that your clinical opinion is invalid. It doesn't mean that you've lost credibility. And it definitely doesn't mean that other people are suddenly questioning your expertise. It just means you've shared something that someone else sees differently or through a completely different lived experience. And in the online space, that is going to happen. So instead of jumping straight into, oh my goodness, I need to fix this, or I shouldn't have posted that, the goal is just to pause and recognize that this is actually a normal part of having visibility online. And actually, once you recognize this, the less power these moments hold over you, and the easier it becomes to keep showing up confidently with your personal clinical voice. Okay, now I'm going to share with you the story about that post that got lots of negative comments in my children's nutritionist business. So, in this business, I help parents with fussy eaters and give parenting advice to help make mealtimes less stressful. So, typically, my content wouldn't get too much criticism or negative comments until that post. I posted a piece of content around kids refusing dinner and specifically around the question, if my child chooses not to eat at dinner time, should we send them to bed without eating? Now, this is something that a lot of parents struggle with, and what often happens is they'll offer what's called a rescue meal. So, if the child refuses the dinner that's been served, they'll then make something else so that the child doesn't go to bed hungry. And whilst this feels like the kindest thing to do for your child, the problem is that over time it can actually create more issues because children learn that if they hold out, something nicer will eventually come along, which can make them less likely to engage with family meals and become more selective with their eating in the long term. And I was very clear that I don't recommend offering a rescue meal if they don't eat their dinner. I talked about the principle of parent provides, child decides, the division of responsibility, and suggested having a small, healthy bedtime snack as part of the everyday routine. Now, the comment section got very lively, to say the least. Lots of parents were really grateful for the advice, but there were also a few parents in the comments too disagreeing quite strongly. And one comment in particular stood out. It was a really long comment saying the advice was toxic and that it was never okay to let a child go to bed hungry and that they were disappointed in the post and expected better from someone with my background. And I'll be honest with you, at first, that did affect me. It's hard to receive that kind of criticism when you've put something out there that you genuinely believe is helpful and evidence based. My immediate reaction was that little internal wobble of, gosh, should I have posted that? And I nearly decided to delete the post, but I didn't. And then something really interesting happened. The post didn't flop. In fact, it absolutely blew up. It ended up being my highest ever performing post with over 80,000 likes and 169 comments and so many DMs from parents. And yes, there were negative comments in there, but there were far more positive ones. People who were genuinely relieved to finally understand what to do differently. So this post ended up having a really big positive impact on my visibility, which was amazing. In fact, I even put some ads behind that post afterwards. So even more people would be able to see it because it was performing so well. And what felt uncomfortable at first really quite quickly turned into something that actually expanded my reach, my impact, and my authority in that space. It was a really clear reminder that negative comments don't automatically equal damage, like we all might assume at first. In many cases, it just means it's strong enough to get a reaction in the first place. Now, I want to go a bit deeper into the lessons we can learn from this story. Firstly, when it comes to your mindset around getting negative comments and criticisms online. And secondly, what it teaches us about the benefits of polarizing content and how you can bring more of that into your content too to help you stand out, to stop blending into generic advice and to strengthen your positioning as the go-to expert in your field. The first thing this story really shows is the difference between how we're trained to think in the NHS versus how we need to show up online in our private practices. So in the NHS, we're taught to stick to guidelines, we're taught to follow protocols and be really quite careful about what we say. But in private practice, we have a lot more freedom to share our personal clinical opinions, our experiences, and the way that we interpret and apply the evidence in real life. And if we want to stand out and build authority, we need to be willing to use that freedom to confidently express those personal clinical opinions, even if that means not everyone agrees with us. Now, in my case, it was a parent who disagreed with my post, but often in the health and particularly the nutrition space, a lot of the pushback actually comes from other healthcare professionals. This is when it's really important to remember that guidelines are exactly that. Guidelines. They're not always black and white rules, and people also interpret things differently. So two dietitians can look at exactly the same research, the same evidence base, and come to slightly different conclusions based on their experience and interpretation. There isn't always one single correct way to say something, so never be afraid to have your own clinical opinion. It's called clinical judgment for a reason. Because if you try and create content that nobody could possibly ever disagree with, you're going to end up bland. You're going to end up shrinking yourself, watering down your message and saying, well, actually very little at all. So this brings us nicely on to lesson number 2, the benefit of polarizing content. Now, when I say polarizing, I don't really mean being controversial for the sake of it or posting things just to provoke a reaction. What I mean is being really clear in your stance. Taking a position, saying something in a way that actually reflects your clinical reasoning and how you work with clients, even if not everyone would agree. Polarizing content can be really powerful for your business. It helps get more eyes on you. It builds trust faster with the people who do align with your approach, and it positions you as someone who actually stands for something, rather than just blending into generic advice online. So right now, you might be posting great educational content and giving loads of useful, handy tips, but chances are you're not actually taking a position. And the problem with that is it makes it really hard for the right client to know if you're their person. Whereas when you start to express your clinical reasoning more openly, your preferences, your approach, what you do and don't believe works, people start to self-select. The right people think, well, this makes so much sense to me. And the wrong people, well, they just simply move on. So what does polarizing content actually look like in practice for you as a health professional? And what are some examples that you can use this week if you want to? Well, there's tons of different angles you can take for this. The first option is to do something similar to my example, where you share a clinical opinion or experience that you know not everyone's going to agree with, but it's backed by your own clinical experience and the results that you see consistently in your practice. So like my post example, you could answer a question that you get asked a lot, especially one where your answer might go slightly against what people might expect. Another idea is to challenge common advice in your space. So think about things you often see recommended and challenge them. Explain what you see in practice that makes you take a different view. You could also do a this versus that style post where you compare mainstream advice with your own approach. Or you could share something that you don't do in your practice and explain your reasoning behind it. And what I will say is, whenever I create this kind of content myself, it almost always outperforms those really generic tip style posts. And I think a big reason for that is because it naturally builds curiosity. And remember, polarizing content is something that will come a lot more naturally to you the more you start doing it. So why not give it a start this week? So here's a little action step for you to take after this episode. Just take a few minutes and brain dump a few things. Think of one question that you get asked a lot from people where your answer may divide opinion. Also, have a think of 3 to 5 pieces of common advice that you see in your niche that you don't fully align with based on your clinical experience. And then from that list, just pick one and turn it into a post this week using one of those angles that we spoke about. And I'd love to hear how you get on. So I really hope that this episode has given you some food for thought. So a few final reminders I just want to leave you with. Firstly, you are an autonomous clinician with the freedom to interpret evidence and apply it in a way that reflects your own clinical reasoning. So why wouldn't you share that openly with the people who need to hear it? Secondly, you're not here to be universally agreed with. People will always bring their own experiences, their beliefs, and their interpretations into your content. And let's face it, there'll always be someone who disagrees with you, no matter what you say. And then thirdly, even when someone disagrees with your stance, they're still reading, they're still interacting, and that's still giving your content reach. And for the right people watching, it builds curiosity, authority, and trust. So this is your sign to start creating more polarizing content. And if listening to this has made you think, I should probably get some help getting more confident with marketing myself and actually showing up in a stronger way to attract clients, then this is exactly the kind of work we do inside Accelerate. Accelerate is my business coaching program specifically for health professionals who want to build a profitable private practice without constantly guessing what to do to get clients. And yes, creating stronger content, including things like polarizing content, is one part of it, but it's really just a very small piece of the bigger picture. Inside the program, we cover everything you actually need to grow a profitable health business from A to Z. So things like your marketing and your messaging and your pricing and your positioning, sales and discovery calls, the tech, the systems behind your business, and how to move beyond just relying on one-to-one sessions so your income feels more stable and actually more scalable. It's really about helping you build something solid that's going to support you financially without trying to piece everything together on your own. So if that even sounds a little bit interesting to you, then DM me with the word Accelerate on Instagram to learn more and see if you would be a good fit. You can find my Instagram handle in the show notes. Bye for now. That's it for another week. Thank you so much for joining me as we explore the abundance of strategies to help you recapture that feeling of possibility and excitement as you drive your business forwards and beyond the clinic room. If you found today's episode inspirational, then don't forget to like and subscribe to the show to stay in the loop for more valuable advice that I'm going to be sharing each week. If you want to be the first to hear about new episode releases, news and ways that I can support your business growth, then please don't forget to check out the links in the show notes, and you can also connect with me from there. Don't keep me a secret. I would be delighted if you left a review and shared this podcast with your colleagues. Until next time, bye for now.